Before you get going again, we should take it, and you started it. Nice. All right. Something simple. I guess no. Let's just jump right into the deep end. Um, Based on the principles of information, meme theory, and science of psychology, I think I have created what I would consider the best meme, and I mean that in a very, very strict sense of every single one of those words. And I'll start off this video with saying that I believe that best meme, so to speak, is question everything. But it's very important to note that within this question everything, we need to be able to develop limits to what it's even sensible to question. So, question everything doesn't mean, be like, oh, is that fan even real? No, we need to actually even begin to understand how we interpret, well, anything before we can even start questioning it, i.e., we need to identify how we exist. And that gets back to my earlier question. So we need to go all the way back to the start. As soon as we start questioning everything, it'll bring us, no matter how we do it, it'll just go, why is that? Why is that? Why is that? We get to a big choke point first. The first one is that absolutely everything that we ever perceive it comes through our senses. Therefore, our senses actually provide a constraint on what we can know. This then goes to beg the question, what are the senses? Now, the senses are, you know, touch, temperature, taste, sound, sight, smell, whatever. And if there's others that I just forgot, who cares? It doesn't matter. They're all just, the point is that they're all just data points, right? Your body is covered in neurons, and each one of them at the skin, which are at different intervals. That will create a temperature simulation matrix, a temperature matrix, a pressure matrix, so you get your body. Hearing is just a one input thing. It's the movement of the eardrums, and that's a really important one. Taste, chemical reactions with food, so it's a lot of little data points. And this is important for the next step, the eye. And the orientation of these data points isn't important for the survival of the body, whereas the orientation of these data points, each single retina in the eye, is. Those have to be structured relative to each other to see. And that's it. That's all we get. Now, it's very important that what these data points do is that they accumulate information, and our brain will process that information. Now, the thing is that, instead of someone spending the forever to figure out how something works or what something does using those senses, it can actually be a lot faster and a lot more efficient to communicate that information through a different method, such as talking. In fact, the act of talking, which is creating oscillations in the air and sound waves, it's transferring the information of whatever you're describing. Let's say you're describing a mathematical concept. You're describing a shape or a piece of art. The information of that is now being transferred into another person's brain. If you're describing something like art, they're getting a semi-formed image of the art. And the better your description, the better their understanding of the art can be, because you've communicated well. And in fact, that makes the gold standard for communication when someone makes mouth sounds that they think mean the exact same thing as the person who hears those mouth sounds. It makes communication a really nasty and messy process, because communication isn't, one person saying something to someone else. It's really just two systems trying to agree on the meaning of a sound, and then also using agreed meaning of sounds to illustrate other concepts, i.e. creating connected webs of thought, more or less. At least that's how I think of it. So that roadblock of the brain, of the senses, that's all we've got. And then what we experience something, right? But we wouldn't describe what we experience as a bunch of discrete data points. We have what feels like an encompassing perception. And this is where I want to draw an important philosophical distinction between perception and reality. Reality is, what the data is. It's coming into our eyes, it's being processed by our brain. Perception is the result of that processing, whatever that is. Now, the point of this argument is to not need to define what it is, right? It's just really, it means that what we perceive is our best guess possible of what reality is. But of course, because anyone could be wrong, everyone's perception can be different. But even though everyone's perception of reality is different, reality is the same for everyone. And that's where we have the power of science. Now, and then if we want to go one step further back, we've got I think, therefore I am. So I think, therefore I am establishes a few things. It establishes existence, that is us, and we don't need to describe it, we just need to know it exists. So I think, therefore I am, all it does is assert, and in effect prove to ourselves that we do exist in some situation. Because, well, what does not existence look like? And are you experienced not existence? If you don't even know what it looks like, that means you can't be experiencing it right now. Because right now, you're experiencing something. And that's my base level of my entire philosophy. At this level, you're experiencing something. What are you experiencing and why are you experiencing it the way that you're experienced is, I think, the massively important philosophical and scientific and I hate to go down this angle, but I think, you know what? No. I'm going to take this angle and I'm going to take it from my top-down approach. The philosophy that defines how the world works needs to account evolutionarily for the existence of spirituality concepts, such as, well, all things claiming to be spiritual and religion. Those things have to be accounted for, not just as that they can exist, but that they're evolutionarily favorable to exist. And I think that through meme theory, it does this. I would say that those things do provide an evolutionary advantage, but it also means that how those things feel are something that have a real process behind them and a process that we can influence. And I would say that process, in terms of, the spirituality concept, is really closely tied to the concept of human interaction. Human interaction. Yeah, human interaction and information, I think, are both very separate, but similarly driving factors behind this. And I would say this to the extent that, when you look at, because these two concepts are really self-reassuring. The human factor, we know, can go to religion. And I'm sure I don't need to go and I might get into it on another tangent, but just believe me when I say that religion is very easy for right brain, for for someone who's trying to make a personal interpretation of the world. It's very easy to get to religion because you'll be raised in it, and it's the same for culture, it's the same for any spirituality. And I think that the right brain kind of needs something of that vibe to latch onto. What the left brain considers similar is information. So the thing that the brain's most likely going to latch onto as worldview is the most information dense concept that the person is introduced to and connects. That's going to be their worldview. And if that's connected to their social and human interaction, something that is constantly desired, then it forms a very, very strong base. And for example, if you have a worldview that's logical but doesn't incorporate human interaction, it's actually not going to be as strong as a worldview that maybe isn't logical, but they believe is logical and does incorporate human interaction. Hence, religion is evolutionary favorable because human interaction is, because we're intelligent, incredibly, incredibly, incredibly highly selected for. To that extent, I would say that a very good strategy for developing our politics and developing our system of society is to have a far more interactive and, as a paper that I read recently said, culturally oriented society. And this society should produce the result of feeling spiritual, of appearing spiritual to the outside. You could, I expect, in fact, I've gotten to some verbal conclusions from logic, exclusionism, that are really vague, but also correct in their vague sense. They don't rule things in, so to speak, but they rule a lot of things out. All right, let's upload.